The war of words between the U.S. and North Korea is escalating tonight.
Yeah, both countries are making threats about potential military action.
KCAL 9 political reporter Dave Bryan has the latest on this major international crisis. Dave.
No question about it. And, one of the really toughest things about it is nobody really can see what's the way out of this. How do we get this thing resolved? One California congressman calls this the most serious international crisis the U.S. has faced since the Cuban Missile Crisis during the Kennedy administration in the 1960s, as the back and forth verbal escalation, including threats and chest-pounding bravado, is reaching frightening proportions. And here's the latest. Several news agencies are now reporting North Korea is considering a preemptive strike on Guam if they feel the U.S. is provoking them. Guam is an American island territory in the western Pacific Ocean where 2 U.S. military bases are located and several other military facilities. One of them is Andersen Air Force Base, seen here. The U.S. has a missile defense system on Guam to help guard against a missile attack from North Korea, which is about 2,100 miles to the northwest. Right now, it's ground zero in the battle of threats and accusations flying back and forth between the U.S. and North Korea, which reportedly is making stunning progress toward finishing a nuclear missile system that could reach the U.S. mainland much sooner than thought possible before. That news on Tuesday led to this threatening response from President Trump.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
U.S. intelligence has assessed but not firmly concluded that North Korea has developed a miniature nuclear warhead that could fit onto the top of one of those missiles, according to multiple reports. But the assessment is reportedly still a work in progress and is being updated. It's not clear yet whether the device has even been tested or can be used in an attack. Nonetheless, it was enough to send out a chilling message to defense analysts.
We thought in the past that we had some time to let diplomacy work, to let the economic sanctions work. That decision cycle has almost collapsed, and now we're faced with a North Korea that could potentially launch a missile in a very short period of time.
Although North Korea has successfully test-launched long-range missiles which might be able to reach the U.S., it's not clear if those missiles with a nuclear warhead attached on top could withstand the intense heat and pressure of re-entering the Earth's atmosphere and then accurately navigating itself to hit a specific target. And now the debate is heating up about whether President Trump's tough talk is the best way to proceed with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
He has been very threatening beyond a normal statement. And as I said, they will be met with fire, fury, and frankly power, the likes of which this world has never seen before.
In a radio interview, Republican Senator John McCain, chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, said there's a better way.
The great leaders that I've seen, they don't threaten unless they are ready to act. Yeah. And I'm not sure that President Trump is ready to act. And so maybe it'll turn out all right. He's the president. I'm not. But I don't think that some of the great leaders that I have admired would have taken that same path.
California Senator Dianne Feinstein released a statement saying isolating the Koreans has not halted their pursuit of nuclear weapons, and President Trump is not helping the situation with his bombastic comments. The United States, she wrote, must quickly engage North Korea in a high-level dialogue without any preconditions. In my view, diplomacy, she said, is the only sound path forward. Congressman Ted Lieu from Torrance tweeted, reckless for the president to make provocative statements about North Korea and back U.S. into a corner. We need de-escalation, not miscalculation. And Republican Congressman Darrell Issa, who represents part of southern Orange County, compared the standoff with North Korea to the most dangerous Cold War nuclear confrontation.
It represents the greatest crisis probably since, let me rephrase that, undoubtedly since the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is something that can hit us and our allies, and it's with a rogue nation that we suspect would use it.
Now the president's tough talk is a sharp departure from what Secretary of State Rex Tillerson was saying just last week about North Korea.
And we're trying to convey to the North Koreans, we are not your enemy. We're not your threat.
Now, today's developments come on the heels of what may be Tillerson's biggest victory of his Secretary of State term so far, when he played a key role in convincing China and Russia to endorse a unanimous vote in the United Nations to impose tougher sanctions against North Korea. Now, one of the questions is, in the current highly charged environment, will the sanctions even have a chance to work before things really fall apart? Jeff?
Yeah, they are certainly tense times that we're having right now, Dave. Let me ask you about, the Secretary of State and the President have never always been exactly on the same page. But what does this mean in dealing with a dictator like this when it comes to two contradictory comments?
Yeah, it's a good question, and there are two ways to look at that. First, as you suggested, the failure to present a united message to North Korea from the president and his most important cabinet member on international issues could be leading the North Koreans to think they're dealing with a weak and very divided administration, and that may be emboldening them to pursue a hard line themselves. But there's another possibility, and that is that President Trump and Secretary Tillerson are taking the good cop, bad cop approach to North Korea, showing them strength and aggressive hostility on one hand, while offering more of a conciliatory and cooperative approach on the other. And who knows, Jeff, maybe one of those will work.
Okay, we'll wait and see. As we said, tense times right now, Dave. Thank you.